Year in and year out, the NFL landscape is plagued with teams fighting for the Super Bowl, but in reality there's only a handful that are actually in true contention for the Lombardi Trophy. In this video we'll mention 5 of those teams who had a legit shot at exceeding their expectations, and on the other hand 5 who I think will fall short and remain as pretenders in 2024. Starting with the latter come the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's travel back 1 year. Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph somehow led this team to a playoff berth, winning 10 games without too much trouble. The Steelers lost on the very first round, but it was honestly not a terrible season for them. Fast forward a couple of months, all 3 of those QBs are gone in favor of a much improved room, featuring former Super Bowl winner Russell Wilson and potentially upcoming star Justin Fields. Logic would tell us this team is therefore set to improve, and although I agree, they are not legit contenders, and here's why. They are a strong team and most likely they'll get a winning record. But for me, that's just about it. I don't think even the coaching staff has eyes set on a Super Bowl and are focused mainly on just barely getting into the playoffs, which isn't terrible, but isn't what I would call Super Bowl contenders by any means either. Unlike fans from the Houston Texans, who I think should be eager to see what 2024 holds for them. Last year, they took one of the biggest leaps in the entire league, which is a feat I would attribute mainly to the incoming coaching staff and of course Ohio State rookie CJ Stroud. The Texans managed to get to the divisional round of the playoffs in Stroud's first year, and the regular season, although not perfect, showed lots of promise for the future. I think 2024 could very well be a fantastic year for them, and although I'm not saying they'll win the Super Bowl, one thing's for sure, they are most certainly true contenders to fight for it. The divisional round of the playoffs seems like the floor for me, and there is no denying that this team winning the Super Bowl would surprise absolutely nobody, which cannot be said about teams like the Jets, for example. This is easily a top 10 roster, and I haven't forgotten how good Aaron Rodgers is when fully healthy. But hear me out. The team is carrying a long-lasting losing culture that I think needs more than 1 year to fully disappear. For me, they could very well get into the playoffs, maybe even by winning their division. But if I'm being 100% honest here, I don't think they have a legit shot at a Super Bowl this season. On the other hand, I could very well see the Lions making a run at the Lombardi Trophy. Of course, I excluded the obvious Chiefs and Niners from this video for the sake of entertainment, but I think the Lions do deserve the recognition. This mainly due to the fact that their turnaround was so quick. Just last year they had their breakout, reaching the conference championship in the process. I'm well aware that they are currently one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl, but I think it's important to emphasize them as legit contenders, especially given the fact that they are still just starting to look like one. Moving on, let's go bold here and place the Cowboys as pretenders. Let's first of all have the concept clear. They may be pretenders, but that doesn't mean they aren't a really good team. Dallas has all the potential to fight and win their division, and I'm honestly counting on them to have a really good regular season. However, their playoff performances these last few years have been absolutely atrocious, and without any notable changes to the roster, ownership and coaching staff, I just don't see that changing in the near future. Dak Prescott was amazing last season, and he could potentially be even better this year considering his contract situation, but outside of that, there's truly nothing that leads me to believe they'll be fighting for a Super Bowl this season. Unlike their division rivals over in Philadelphia, the Eagles did have one of the most devastating late season collapses I've seen last season, and because of that, I think they most certainly lost some credibility. But let's leave the feelings aside. Philly made a lot of important moves during the offseason, and to say they are not a top 10 team right now would certainly be a mistake. The Eagles have the roster and the pass production to get back to the Super Bowl, and even though the NFC is currently stacked with talent, I don't think it's crazy to think the Eagles could be at the same level as the Niners or Lions come playoff time. However, one team who is most certainly a pretender is Cleveland. The Browns did have a solid season last year, even when plagued with injuries. Most key players are coming back, so I could see them having a solid regular season without too much trouble. However, this is not a Super Bowl team, and they lack the culture and overall production needed in order to actually fight for a championship. They are a really good team, don't get me wrong, but they are the most pure definition of a pretender, as the chance they have to even reach the Super Bowl is slim to none, and there's no shame in that. They could improve, and if they're able to build a winning culture, I could definitely see them as legit Super Bowl contenders within the next 3 years, but as of right now, they're nowhere near that level. Now, one true contender at that level are the Green Bay Packers. They didn't really have the most impressive regular season last time around, but they made up for it with a truly amazing playoff run one that surprised everyone. Jordan Love could take the next step in 2024, and overall this team does have the pieces to fight for a Super Bowl. I don't think they're a top 3 or a top 5 team as some analysts say, but I do however agree that they could be one of the toughest NFC teams to beat. As of right now, I have them falling to second place in their division to Detroit, but they could very well fight for that title and get a top 4 seed in the NFC. We shall see what happens with them, but the potential is most certainly there, and it's going to be fun to see if they're able to explode it in order to become a top tier team as they once were with Aaron Rodgers. Moving on to our last pretender, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Last year, they started their season in impressive fashion, being the number 1 seed at one point. It appears as if they had found a winning identity, becoming a top powerhouse in the AFC, but then it all crumbled down. They rapidly collapsed late in the season to the point where they missed out on the playoffs altogether. I think the improvements they made during the offseason are quite good and could potentially boost them just enough to get into the postseason this time around. However, even if they manage to do that, I'm fully confident that they won't be getting too close to the Super Bowl this year. Future may be somewhat bright, having a good cornerstone in Trevor Lawrence, but I don't know, it seems like they have the potential to be a great team, but just short of a true championship caliber one. And now for our last contender, the Cincinnati Bengals. They entered 2023 as one of the strongest teams in the entire league, but unfortunately for them, injuries ended their season before it could even begin to shape out. In 2024, however, they are in a completely different situation, coming in as what seems to be a strong team, but with most people having them as nothing more than a playoff contender. Personally, I wanna break that trend because there's truly nothing that leads me to believe this is not a championship caliber team. Look, I'm not saying they are getting the number 1 seed and making their way to the Super Bowl with ease, but I'm pretty sure that this team has the talent to fight for the championship even if they drop a couple of games during the regular season. Anyways, if you have some different takes, make sure to write them down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.